Hello and welcome to Legislative Report. I'm State Representative Seth Grove of the 196th District in York County. During this current legislative session, House Republicans have been focused on creating jobs as a top priority. A partner in this mission is the Pennsylvania Department of Community and Economic Development. They oversee a number of programs designed to enhance our communities by attracting companies and improving neighborhoods. Here today, we have a great honor to give a report on the activities of DCED is the Department Secretary, Alan Walker. Secretary Walker, thank you so much for giving your time to come out today and discuss what's happening, all the great things happening in Pennsylvania. Let's start off maybe by giving exactly what is DCED for viewers who may not understand what it is and what its mission and how it helps businesses and local governments.
Sure. DCED is a combination of two former departments, the Department of Commerce and the Department of Community Affairs, and they were combined about 12 years ago into the Department of Community and Economic Development. So we really have two sides. We do the community side. A lot of people know about Act 47 when communities get into financial trouble where we'll come in and help them do a workout. And then we do the economic development side, which has more to do with where do we go from here, what can we do to help local communities, what can we do to help companies that are growing, how can we attract new firms into the state of Pennsylvania. So we have a dual mission in a way.
Yeah, it's great. It's encompassing. Obviously, you've done a great job, I think, coming in and taking over the helm. Can you paint us a picture of Pennsylvania's reputation regarding economic development, and are there any maybe misconceptions out there?
Well, I think we have a bad rap because of some legacy issues. One is the collapse of the coal mining industry. When that industry collapsed in the 50s and early 60s, we ended up with thousands and thousands of displaced miners in the anthracite region and the bituminous region. For example, at one time there were 500,000 people working underground in mines in the state of Pennsylvania. Today there are about 5,000.
Wow.
Then we got hit with what happened in the steel industry in the late 70s and the 80s. And again, that industry, at one time the state of Pennsylvania manufactured 35% of the steel that was manufactured in the world. Today we do less than 1%. And we had a real disruption in our labor market because of the contraction. And that industry employed about 400,000 people in steel mills in Pennsylvania. So we as a state had to absorb that as a social cost. But we've worked through it now, and I think we're back to where we want to be, and we're really able to focus on where do we want to go from here. But we still have that image out there as a state that lost most of its manufacturing, heavy manufacturing. As a result, we were perceived as a high-tax state and a high-tax business state because we had to carry some of these social costs that other states didn't have to carry.
Yeah, and that's great. We are considered, one of the highest corporate tax states in the country. You can talk about tort reform and legal reform needed to attract more business in. Obviously, we've addressed some of those concerns with the governor as a partner of the General Assembly. We did the Fair Share Act. In the House, at least, we passed legislation to reduce the corporate net income tax. And it's amazing when you look at the corporate net income tax, 9.99%, the highest out of every state in the country. When you add the federal business tax on top of that, the highest politically taxed corporate political entity in the entire world. Japan was number one. They cut theirs. Now Pennsylvania has that esteemed number one rating.
Well, we have the capital stock and franchise tax,
yes,
which you have to add on to the corporate net income tax. And that's where I think the governor's doing a super job. That's hopefully going to be phased out within a couple of years. Then we will just have the one tax, which is the corporate net income tax, and hopefully we can focus on phasing that down. I would like to be more in the middle of the pack than the highest in the country. So.
Yeah, sometimes it's good to be number one. Sometimes it's good to be at the bottom or near the middle. I think that's one we can agree with. We need to get away from that number one highest tax category and get it more in the back to develop it. And maybe we can discuss that. What more can we do in the state to attract more business? Obviously, we want to ensure businesses here are strong and thrive, but bring in new jobs, bring in new industries and new businesses. What can we do from
Well, you have to have the infrastructure. So it's the old thing, if you build it, they will come. And I think the state has had some pretty good programs for building industrial parks and working with local communities to pick out sites. The state generally loans them the money, and then as they sell off the tract, the state gets paid back. I think that's a good program. We're getting an unbelievable break with what's happening in energy in the state of Pennsylvania, and there are going to be a lot of new jobs come along with what's happening in energy. But interestingly, a lot of the development is in areas that don't traditionally have the industrial parks and don't have the strongest infrastructure, so we need to do some work in those areas. However, the communities, such as Williamsport, that have nice industrial parks, have really benefited because Halliburton came in and built a huge facility in the Williamsport area as a result of having a site ready, but also what was going on with the gas industry. So the communities that think strategically and have a good plan and generally have the best local leadership are the communities that are going to do well in the future.
Yeah, that's great. And, you know, I think Marcellus Shale has been a huge game changer, not only for Pennsylvania, but we look at the United States nationally. You know, a local, a United States-born energy source that's going to last us for generations, cutting supply of importing natural gas. You know, I kind of find it ironic New York still has a moratorium on drilling, and they're importing Pennsylvania natural gas.
Their loss is our gain.
Yeah.
But the statistic is incredible. We have more BTU equivalent in natural gas under the state of Pennsylvania than Saudi Arabia has in oil under all of Saudi Arabia. So Pennsylvania can be a key player if we as a country have the will to push for energy independence. Pennsylvania will be a big part of that.
Yeah, not to mention clean coal technology and the amount of coal we still have underneath Pennsylvania. And, you know, looking at our manufacturing base, you know, York County has tons of manufacturing, still thriving. How important natural gas plays in the manufacturing sector is just amazing. And
what we're going to see as we develop the natural gas is energy costs will be driven down, and that will make Pennsylvania a much more attractive place to locate because at least in the Middle Atlantic states and the Northeast, we're going to have by far the most competitive energy rates.
Yeah, which is a huge driver. And I know there was a business in Carlisle that was looking to move to Kentucky because of the cost of energy, and they decided to actually stay because of the cost drivers of not having to pay. Procter & Gamble in Northeast drills right there on their at their business location.
That's probably the best example I've seen. They had 1,500 acres at their site. They drilled their own wells. They went with cogeneration to generate their own electricity and make their own steam. They drove down their cost of production by about 30%, and as a result, we're able to add 500 new employees.
Yeah, so that's, you know, cutting the cost creates jobs, and I think we've done a great job of it. And yeah, under your leadership, Governor's leadership, and with partnering with the General Assembly, it's been a tremendous game changer for Pennsylvania.
Yeah, it's an incredible resource. People who aren't in the gas region don't realize how extensive it is and what the game changer is, but it's going to affect the whole state. I ultimately think as it plays out, it will probably raise the standard of living in the entire state.
Yeah, and that's definitely a good thing. One of the awesome parts about Pennsylvania, you know, my father was a blue-collar worker. We have a lot of excellent workers here in Pennsylvania. Is that a tool we get out there to promote the businesses that we have? We still have an ingrained work ethic. We have individuals in this state that love to work, that are honored to work, and is that something businesses look for?
Yeah, I think that's probably one of our that's our greatest heritage is the work ethic of the people here in Pennsylvania. Absenteeism isn't a problem. Tardiness isn't a problem, and it's there. It's that way just about in the whole state. And yes, we have that reputation, and that's one reason why we do get a look from, especially overseas companies that are looking for a location in the States. They're very attracted to Pennsylvania.
That's terrific, and it's to me it's wonderful that we still have that work ethic that's passed from generation to generation, and is ingrained in our society to maintain that level of work ethic.
Well, that was our strength. That was one of our real strengths.
Yeah. Can you give us an example of a region within Pennsylvania where a success story for attracting companies or can offer maybe communities other models of how to develop?
If I were going to put a model together, I would use probably the Lehigh Valley.
Okay.
Now they used to be known as Lehigh County and Northampton County and Bethlehem, Allen, and Easton. They got together and took a regional approach. They now market themselves as the Lehigh Valley. Those of us in Pennsylvania, when we hear the Lehigh Valley, we know exactly what they're talking about. But they literally had to reinvent themselves because they lost Bethlehem Steel, which was a huge employer up there. And they lost some other heavy, Mack Truck moved to South Carolina. They lost a lot of their heavy industry, but the leaders in the community got together to figure out, well, what's our strategy for reinventing our community? And they've done an incredible job. Those are communities that are on the way back, and we're getting a lot of looks in that area from companies that are in New Jersey and New York because of the lower cost of doing business in the state of Pennsylvania. I've been over there for a fair number of groundbreakings. I like their model. I think your region, South Central Pennsylvania, is going to get a real benefit from the push up from Baltimore because, as you know, in Maryland, they're pretty much out of land. And Adams County and York County and some of the other counties that are on the border with Maryland are going to be impacted in a very positive way. Plus, once they get to Pennsylvania, as you know, they like the labor force here. They like what they find. I think with some of those counties, York, Cumberland, Adams, the issue is how much growth do you want? Because I see real potential there. Yeah, and it's tough for local communities because obviously we have a rural heritage in York County. We have strong farming communities, and make sure you have redevelopment and development that still protects that heritage while you're bringing jobs and infrastructure and businesses in. Well, that's where planning becomes very important because I actually think you can have both. I think you can preserve that rural way of life, and then you can also have some very strong manufacturing. If you use the cluster approach and you use some good land use planning so that you don't take every farm in the county and turn it into a suburb. I mean, it's just a matter of thinking strategically about what do you want to preserve and what do you want the county to look like in the future. Yeah, I'm very excited for the potential of Pennsylvania all over. We already have a very strong connection that it's referred to as a Little Baltimore. Former Governor Ehrlich actually has family in York County. When he comes up here, he stops, and he says he's actually more popular in southern York County than he is in Maryland, thinking he could escape, the public eye a little bit by coming up to York. But we have York County has a great quality of life, and my goal as secretary is to see the economy of Pennsylvania grow at the same rate or better than the national rate. And actually, believe it or not, for the last 5 years we've done that. But from 1950 until, let's say, 2007, our growth rate was about half the national average. Wow, okay. And this is where the energy finds and the way we're developing energy are really starting to turn our economy around. Yeah, hopefully that translates out to the public so they understand how critical energy independence and developing safely dependence on energy will affect. It may not be in our area, but it's going to affect our area for the better. Most of your constituents, though, should already be seeing the benefit of, number one, lower energy costs, and if they have gas heat in their homes, they should be seeing lower gas prices in their homes. So most areas of the state, natural gas prices have gone down, and generally, electric prices have gone down. People didn't really think that was going to happen because of deregulation. Yes. But everything hit just right. We have an oversupply of coal. We have an oversupply of natural gas. We have a nice mix of nuclear. I mean, we have a great mix in Pennsylvania, and the consumers have really benefited from that. Yep. Let's take a quick break from legislative report. We'll turn in a moment, and we'll hit on some initiatives that hopefully we can get into place in Pennsylvania to benefit our overall business climate. So we'll be right back.
Did you know that the chamber of the Pennsylvania House of Representatives contains a painting depicting the 24 hours of the day? Located in the center of the ceiling, the mural, titled The Hours, was created by artist Edwin Austin Abbey. This wonderful masterpiece charts the setting of the sun, moon, and the many stars that grace the heavens. 24 maidens, who each represent an hour of the day, begin each day in light and gladness and ends in solemn drapery carried on still shoulders. Now you know.
Did you know The Avenue of Flags presentation at Indiantown Gap National Cemetery has over 500 casket flags. Among the flags displayed are Commonwealth, territorial, and military flags. The flags are tied to 20-foot poles spaced 40 feet apart on both sides of the main drive of the cemetery. It takes about 2 hours to set up and take down all of the flags. Volunteers are encouraged to help with this task and must be at least 13 years of age. All of the flags are donated to the Avenue of Flags by families of the deceased. Now you know.
Welcome back to the program. I'm State Representative Seth Grove. Joining me now is the Secretary of Pennsylvania Department of Economic and Community Development, Alan Walker. We're discussing DCED's role in job creation and economic development, and you've came out with a new plan to try to help revitalize Pennsylvania's economy. It's called the Pennsylvania Business Development Authority. It's a good government initiative because it streamlines a number of programs, and that's good because if you have too many programs, sometimes the pot of money gets kind of whittled down. But if you can bring them together and focus it on something, it's a good thing. Can you just briefly go over the program, what its goals are, and how it's going to be an asset to Pennsylvania's economic development?
Yes, thank you. I'm actually in my 20th month now as Secretary, but the first thing I did when I came in was to do an inventory of all the assets and to see what we could do more efficiently. And we took cuts in our department like most of the departments did because we had to get the state budget under control. But what I discovered is that we have a lot of unencumbered assets that we can actually borrow against and come up with a low interest loan fund. That's what the Pennsylvania Business Development Authority is all about. We're going to combine 8 existing programs under this one authority. We feel we can borrow somewhere between $100 million and $200 million and put that into economic development all over the state in the form of low interest loans. But right now there are assets that are sitting there that are unencumbered. So this is almost a freebie.
Yeah.
It's like going down into your cellar and discovering a famous painting on the wall that has real value that you didn't think had any value. This has some real value, and we can use it as an economic development tool.
That's excellent. What kind of criteria are you looking at for selection? Are you basing it off of number of jobs coming in?
Yeah, jobs is always important to us, and you know what those jobs pay. But I think we want to really focus also on infrastructure and helping communities that don't have good industrial parks build industrial parks. Because you can be sure if you don't have one, you're not going to attract anybody in. So you need some nice industrial sites with good infrastructure, and then that really helps to bring the industry in. And then you start recruiting industry in, and you have something to show. Most companies, once they decide they're going to locate someplace, they make the decision pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And you have to be ready, and you have to be site ready. So maybe ultimately we'll encourage some of the communities to build spec buildings just so when somebody wants to take a look at their community, they have something ready.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what happened with the Shell cracker plant out west.
Yes.
We had the opportunity to bring in a $3 billion investment into Pennsylvania, jobs, building structure, and basically a brand new industry that will hopefully, obviously it's not in York County, but obviously help out there. And usually what happens, from what I've seen in Pennsylvania, that investment in that area will affect the entire state and bring jobs across the state with it.
Yeah, the investment at that facility in Beaver County would be a minimum of $3 billion. It may be higher than that. And it's ironic because the petrochemical industry more or less got its start in Pennsylvania, you know, in Titusville, Franklin, and Oil City, and then it moved to Texas. Now this is an opportunity to bring back a big part of it, and what we feel will come with it is a big part of the plastics industry. So we are using the cluster concept, and nobody knows exactly how many jobs are going to be created as a result of this one big petrochemical plant, but it's going to be substantial.
Yeah, and of course the governor's leadership in helping the refineries stay in the southeast Pennsylvania as well was critical, and you know, number one,
I don't think a lot of people realize how significant that is. I mean, a year ago in September, we got the announcement that all 3 refineries in Pennsylvania on the Delaware River were going to close. And if you looked at the multiplier effect, that would be 20,000 jobs. And it also meant that middle distillate, which is home heating oil, would have to be brought in from Texas. So if we had a cold winter, we would be stuck with that long supply chain. The governor immediately focused on how do we save 1 or 2 or 3 of these refineries. And I'm happy to say today we know we're going to basically save all 3 of the refineries, and we'll probably end up with more jobs than we had before. But it was a very, very good work on the part of the governor and his economic development team.
Yeah, and that's critical, especially for the amount of people using home heating oil in Pennsylvania. The cost for, obviously it's a huge cost driver to transmit that heating supply from Texas up.
Sure.
Now it's localized, less cost, less travel.
Exactly.
So it'll help reduce the cost.
Yeah, not just Pennsylvania, but the whole Middle Atlantic region and New England would have been hit very hard. So those refineries made 40% of the home heating oil in that region. That's a lot.
Yeah. Let's turn it over to local governments. We obviously have a third-class city, York City, in the heart of York County, and it is the heart of York County. The way the city goes, so fares the rest of the county. It used to be the main hub of York County, and now it's kind of dispersed outside. And we were talking beforehand, you're very familiar with York City and a lot of the business leaders in the community. What can DC do to help? What have you done? What can we do to help revitalize those downtowns, bring jobs in, and make them a more attractive place to live and work?
Well, I have a lot of familiarity with this concept and what we do. My hometown is Clearfield. Clearfield is the county seat of Clearfield County. So I really work closely with the state. We became a Main Street community, and it really helped us revitalize our downtown. What we did in Clearfield was come up with a strategic plan that we called Vision 2020, which is how do we want our downtown to look in the year 2020. My argument was if you don't do it, somebody's going to dictate it to you, so maybe you better decide what you want.
Yeah.
And like York, we have a lot of interesting buildings downtown, churches and government buildings. So you certainly want to save those because they give your downtown your character. And then you've got I'll tell you what we did in Clearfield, which may also work in York. And I think the city of York looks pretty good. They've done a pretty good job there. But we convinced the county to move all jobs that were county related back into the downtown. So people were willing to buy the old stores and convert the first floor into office buildings. So we've saved a number of buildings in our downtown just by turning them into office buildings. Well, once you bring the county workers back, then you get your restaurants and you get a little bit of retail shopping. It all works together. So you have to look at what logically belongs in your downtown. Your banking can be downtown. In Clearfield, we decided to build a new YMCA downtown, keep it downtown, and it's a real draw. So there was a lot of synergy. But it's really up to the local community and up to the local leadership. If you're going to wait for somebody from Harrisburg or Washington to drop the solution on you, it probably won't happen. But what we can do is help you with resources once you know what your strategic plan is. And there are some towns, I'll mention a few that have done it extremely well. Bedford, Pennsylvania, which is a little town of 3,500 people. Yeah. They've reinvented their downtown. Sharon, Pennsylvania, which is a third-class city of 14,000 people in the western part of the state. They've reinvented their downtown. Titusville, Pennsylvania, which is a small town of 6,000 people. They decided they wanted to save some of their key buildings in the downtown. They actually saved the office building where John D. Rockefeller and Joseph Pugh had their offices during the oil boom. It gives the downtown a lot of character. So you definitely want to save your buildings that have character and add character to the downtown. And then you have to look for, well, what is viable to operate in the downtown? Probably most of the downtowns aren't going to be big retail centers. They're going to be specialty shops. But they can do government function and banking, things like that, and I think that's probably the best way to save a downtown.
Yeah, it's terrific, and it obviously jobs and bringing money, investment into downtown structures. We passed a historic tax credit with the past year's fiscal year. I believe that takes effect not this fiscal year, but the following fiscal year. Those little steps in helping recreate those downtowns are critical.
Yeah, because that will give businesses an incentive to reinvest in the downtown. The tax credit idea is a great concept because you have to earn it to use it.
Yeah.
You're not just handing out money, you're accomplishing what you want to accomplish.
That's terrific. We are almost out of time. I'm not sure we have enough time to get into another topic, so we'll kind of cut it off here. I do appreciate your time. Obviously, you're very busy running an entire department, meeting with us on trying to improve the business climate and move Pennsylvania forward. So I do appreciate your time. I appreciate your work on behalf of the citizens of Pennsylvania, and look forward to continue working in the next legislative session as the rest of this year on doing that, Secretary.
Thank you, and I'll just close with a comment that I believe of the state of Pennsylvania, if we do it right, the best is yet to come.
Yeah. That's all the time we have for today's program. I'm State Representative Seth Grove. If you need assistance with any state government matter, feel free to contact me at my local office or through my website. That information will be shown in a moment. Thanks for watching, and please join me next time for Legislative Report.